of all the things to bring press play out of this like hibernation state that we've been in for the past however many months, it's not anything to do with Overwatch 2, it's not WandaVision, or even The Mandalorian. It's another Overwatch League team completely fucking over their entire players. Alright, let's get into it. This is the collapse of the LA Valiant. This one's just sad. It's legitimately sad, and I'm not even a fan of the team. And it's just sad to see a team like this get ripped apart. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's sort of go through why this is a sad experience for the entire league and how it's like the worst possible decision made. Going back to 2020, before 2020 was 2020, the Valiant had a roster designed to cut costs. They had brought up contenders players who weren't really that good, or like they were good, but they weren't well known. They weren't like Sparkle or Exy or people like that who were well heralded. They had veterans who were borderline talent. They would start games and they'd be good, but like they're not going to be an all-star game changing. And they had some new players. It was a roster that was designed to not spend a lot of money. But the Valiant ended up probably being the most surprising team of surprising teams. You had the Mayhem come out of nowhere. Paris came out of somewhere, but it was way better than we thought that they would be. Who else was there? There was a few other surprising teams in terms of good, and there was a lot of surprising teams in terms of bad. But the Valiant were the ones that were like, this is the surprise. Because they ended up finishing 8th overall in the standings and 5th in NA. And they were I predicted them 19th. And the only reason they weren't last was because Boston existed. So they were 19th. They made it to the final, or every team made it to the finals, but they were the 5th seed in NA, and they beat the Mayhem 3-2, then lost to Fusion and Justice, which you take those losses. Fusion was Philadelphia. If you get them any time before an important like championship game, they're gonna beat you. But if you get them a championship game, you're always gonna beat them because it's the Fusion. And you had the Justice who were like just destroying what everyone thought would be meta and just playing Hulk Zarya with Decay on Zarya and just ruining everybody. So to even get a map against them in the finals was pretty impressive. And so going into 2021, in a season that was quite rough for every team, the Valiant looked like one of the better teams in NA. They had strong young roster, they had one of the best coaches in the league, packing 10. They had enough experience that it wasn't going to be like the first time on the big stage, or maybe physically, but like mentally they'd already been there and had already experienced that defeat that I feel like is important for a lot of teams to get out of their system before they become great. They didn't have any like game-changing pickups in the off-season. They had a few nice ones. I really liked the fact that they brought on Adam from Australian Contenders. He's not going to be a starter for them, but I really like that an Australian Contenders player actually got into the Overwatch League, considering the state of that place. They brought Agilities back. There was a few nice pickups for the Valiant. And then it all starts going to shit right around the 14th. So on the around the 14th, I think it may be a bit earlier than that, the Valiant announced that they would be moving to the APAC region alongside the NYXL and the Philadelphia Fusion. So this was like the first sort of idea that something was not right here, because Philadelphia and New York make sense to go to APAC. New York was there last year. They have a lot of Asian kind of players. It's just going to be better for them. In Asia, the way it works with Asia and NA is that NA is probably like the better, more watched, more supported port of Overwatch, because it's got, America, Australia, Europe. They're more likely to watch the Western than the Eastern. Of course, South Korea is crazy over Overwatch, so it's not that much of a drop-off, but that's kind of what it is, especially for Western players. They're going to want to play in the West, but Eastern players are going to want to play in the East, because these Chinese and these South Korean players, it's better in terms of COVID over there, and it's closer to home. And in a time when, you know, you're playing at home, your ping's going to be more like a ranked game, and you're kind of going through that grueling process of, you know, Overwatch League contention, it's going to be more beneficial for you to be in the Asian region than in the American region, or in North America. So NYXL and Philadelphia makes sense because they've got a lot of those South Korean, Chinese kind of players. I'm not sure if there's actually any Chinese players on either team, but I know that there is South Koreans on both teams. So it makes sense for them to move to the APAC region. But the Valiant didn't. The Valiant didn't have many. As far as I'm concerned, they were almost entirely a Western roster. So for them to move to the APAC region was kind of bizarre. It was strange, certainly, but it wasn't like any cause for major concern. Like, we all thought that the players would be going to APAC, you know. And then on the 15th, Halo, who's on his Twitter sort of Overwatch leaguer, made a two-part tweet that a Chinese company had bought the franchise and wanted to make a Chinese roster instead of a Western one, and that was the reason why they had moved to APAC, was because they wanted a Chinese roster. They're in China. It makes sense, but Valiant said, no, this isn't true. This is a false rumor. And Halo's like, bring it on. I'm confident that this is true. So we kind of had this for like a week or two. We kind of had this sort of, are you believing Halo, who, yes, he's an Overwatch leaker and he's leaked some big stuff before, but he's also, you know, made some big claims that didn't exactly turn out the exact way he said it. So there was always that cause of concern, is Halo correct here? Valiant said no, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then you also had the fact that the Valiant had moved to APAC. They're doing something. So you're either taking Halo's word or you're taking the Valiant's word, and neither of them seemed to be vying for it really well. Like, they were both trying to go, believe me, but you weren't believing either of them. A lot of people were like, okay, if this happens, what's going to happen to the players? Because free agency is pretty much all but over. Like, the season isn't starting for another few months, I believe, but the teams are put together. Free agents have been signed. If a team needs a Genji player like Agilities or a Tracer player like Shax, they've probably already gone out and gotten someone with that hero pool. Now, would they be better? Probably, but unless you're like a top tier talent, you're not going to get picked up right away. And for a lot of these sort of not starting players, but more bench players, I'm actually going to bring up their roster right now and see who probably will get signed and who probably won't. A lot of these bench players are not going to be able to get onto teams, maybe even this season, unless a team's like really looking for. So here we go. They had 3 Korean players. They had Rain, Lastra, and Dreamer, and that's really so they on their roster who got released today was Agilities, Adam, Kai, who used to be KSP. It's KSP or KSP? It was KSP. Who used to be KSP, but now it's Kai. Rain, Lastra, Dreamer, they're your South Koreans, and Shax, who was he was the Tracer player. Tracer, that's the character. So Agilities, Adam, Kai, Rain, Lastra, Dreamer, and Shax was their roster that they were taking to China apparently. And then of course they had their coach, which was like packing 10. They had a few other guys there in the organization. They had their assistant coaches and stuff. And then so it's the 29th of January. Well, it's the 30th over here in Australia, but the 29th of January. The Valiant released this tweet saying that they were going to release all their players and coaches because of visa issues with China. Now, this was something that was always kind of said in the whole mix of it. Like, how would the NA players go getting into China because of visas? I don't think it was visa issues. I think that this is a pretty clear showing that Halo was correct and that a Chinese company has bought this franchise, and all these players have just been completely screwed over. There is no current players in this team. The number of players on Wikipedia, as I'm looking at this, is 0. So what do we go from here? Like, this is the most sensational blow up since Titans last year because it's so sudden. That's what makes collapses like these so video worthy, I guess. I make videos about teams that do this rather than teams that just like the Spitfire who released all their players because they did it at the start of free agency. That's something that teams do. The Defiant did it. I'm a Defiant fan and I didn't talk about it because it's what the teams do. Teams will release the players that they don't want, and sometimes they'll just want to go a different direction, and that happens a lot. So that's not a collapse so much as it is like a restructure or like a rebuild. This is a collapse. This is a collapse of judgment, because the Valiant I've always had a soft spot for the Valiant, because they've always been that team that's like worked really hard on their PR. You know, they've always kind of had those players who you've had players you could root for. You had Custer, Karev, Agilities, these players that you could root for. I'm still trying to get my head around why they do this. Like, why would they sell to the Chinese organization, and why the Chinese organization that we don't know about, we don't know who it is, would release all these fan favorite players? I'm not sure who's even going to get picked up. Like, Kai, I've heard, has a rumored deal, like, nearly ready to go already with the Atlanta Reign. Like, the Reign were looking at him pretty quickly, because a lot of these players would have known that they were probably going to get released. But I don't know, like, Shax might get picked up. A team may want to take a chance on their support duo. Maybe Lastro and Rain get picked up. Dreamer, yeah. I think all three of them are like a 50-50 where they get picked up. Kai's going to get picked up. He's too good. He's too good of a player to not get picked up. He's not a top tier DPS player, but he's second tier quite comfortably for me. He's very good. He's in the tier of very good. Shax, he's quite good. I know Shax is good, but is he good enough to get picked up? Maybe Dallas does? Maybe Dallas picks up Shax? I don't know. I honestly don't know. And I don't know how Shax would fit on that roster of Dallas. I'm just thinking because they need a tracer player desperately. As for the others, Adam's not going to get picked up. He's not. He's an Australian Contenders player. The Valiant was probably the only place that would ever take an Australian Contenders player, because they had such heavy Australian influence. Like, members of their organization were Australian. Custer was one of their best, or not one of their best, but like one of their favorite players. He's Australian. So there's not other teams that have that. Like, you would say the Fuel maybe because they had Trill on their roster for a few years, but they don't have that anymore. They have a Korean roster. They have Element Mystic. But I don't know, man. It's just Agilities. He's probably not going to get picked up unless Genji becomes meta. Unless there's like what we had last year in the Summer Showdown, Agilities ain't getting picked up. Or unless a team wants that veteran influence of a projectile player. So I think at best 3 players get picked up from this team. At best. If this had happened at the start of the off-season, I would have much less of an issue. Like, I'd still have kind of an issue because I feel like the fans got screwed over if that happened, or as it's happened. But it's just, the thing that's got me really mad about this is the timing of this. The timing of this move. Because these players have got screwed over, but I want to talk about how the fans have got screwed over. Because Valiant fans are loyal to this team. I don't see a reason why they'd be loyal anymore. You know, the Valiant spent so much time and effort to get a loyal fan base, and they've just pissed it all away for... Like, they're not even going to be popular in China, though. Like, the move in terms of a popularity thing is not there. Because, let's look at it. They're not going to be popular in LA. LA has another Overwatch League team, the Gladiators, who've made moves to be better. So if you're an LA fan, you might just go to your other team. Maybe that's sacrilegious because you're going to the enemy, but honestly, the Gladiators, they've treated their fans a lot better than the Valiant have, and they haven't even treated them too well because they keep getting lost. They keep losing. Like, the Gladiators, they always have hope and they keep losing at the start, like, when it actually matters. And they've treated their fans better than the Valiant have. Why would you support the Valiant, who's a North American team in China, when you have the Dragons, the Charge, the Spark, and Chengdu, the Hunters? There's 4 Chinese teams. There's 4 of them. The Valiant's the 5th, and they're going to be the 5th most popular. Because they're not a Chinese team. And they're not going to be popular in NA, because they fucked over their NA players. So this move by the Valiant, by the owners, the new owners and the old owners to do this, I have no words. Like, this is a video that's way looser than any other video that I would have done on a topic like this. And I'm not even a Valiant fan. And I feel screwed over. And I don't really care for this team. Like, I like them. I like a lot of Overwatch League teams. I think they have some fun players. Or had. I just hope that the players could see this coming for at least a few weeks so they could talk to friends and family about it, so they could have a plan B when this all went tits up. Because if they were told by the organization this isn't happening and it happened, ooh, you're mad. You're very mad. Rest in peace, Valiant fans. Either going to the Gladiators or whatever other NA team won't screw them over as hard. Like, Boston probably won't screw your team over as hard as this. If I can say one thing to Valiant fans, it's just I'm sorry. I'm sorry this has happened to your team. And I hope that they can see the errors of their ways quickly, but I don't think they will. I think they'll double down on it. I think they'll keep going. At least until next year. And that's just sad. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this really disjointed discussion on the Valiant. I just brought up what I wanted to talk about with this team. It's got no rhyme or reason to it. It's just kind of what I wanted to talk about with this team and how this team is kind of screwed over everything. If you enjoyed this type of content, I'd be very surprised, but hey, leave a like. That'd be fantastic. Anyway, guys, that's a wrap.